So the first step in developing a better pattern activation of our deep core, our transverse abdominis, is to understand what it feels like to engage that muscle in isolation. I think the most important part is feeling what it should be feeling like when you have that deep core engaged. Once you understand what you're trying to accomplish, it makes it so much easier. Developing that better activation pattern simply by feeling what you're supposed to be feeling. So I'm going to give you a couple different things to think about to see if you can feel that transverse abdominis engagement. First, the best thing to do is to put your finger in your belly button and then put another finger at your pubic bone. I want you to think about the fact that you want to be drawing those 2 points together and in without moving anything else. Now, I'd like to make note that if anyone has ever tried to teach this to you before, a lot of times this is taught by pelvic tilting first to set a foundation to help you engage this. I've found over the years that that is not the most successful way to teach activation of the transverse abdominis, because too often people are already pelvic tilting as a compensation, and with that pelvic tilt they're engaging those obliques and their hip flexors. So I want you to actually be in a neutral spine. Plus, that's how you go about moving around the world. So you need to learn how to do this anyway. So it may be harder in the beginning to keep a neutral spine and learn how to engage that transverse abdominis properly, but you'll be so much better off for it. And once you get a hang of it and you're able to start strengthening it with better patterns, it really moves much faster. So let's begin by putting a finger in our belly button, a finger in our pubic bone, and we want to think about that midpoint. This is where we want to feel the engagement the most. And it's not going to feel like a big contraction like you would in your bicep when that bicep shortens. It's going to feel like a tension because these fibers are not shortening like into a tight muscle. They're creating an engagement that's long along that bottom of your abdomen. Think of a girdle, cinching up a girdle. So those muscle fibers are going to contract, and then they're going to create a downward tension as that muscle shortens, okay? So it's more of a tension that you're going to feel, and underneath your belly button, if this is my lower back, it's just going to draw in, okay? So I want you to think about the 2 points of your pelvis on the back. They're going to be as even as possible. You want to have your lower back be neutral, and make note of how that position feels against the floor because you want to not move it, all right? And sometimes in the beginning, that's the hard part. Everybody wants to rock their hips back. So no movement through your hips and pelvis. You don't want to have anything else changing. All we're going to do is take a nice deep breath in, let your belly fill up with air. As you blow out, your rib cage will just naturally translate down towards your pelvis. And right here is where that transverse abdominis is going to engage. And so if you're paying attention, it's very subtle if it's been weak. This sometimes is enough for you to have that experience. If not, you can also think about, as you're blowing out, pulling these 2 points, that belly button point and that pubic bone point, pull them together and in without moving anything else. And that's really when you're going to feel some tension going to happen in between these 2 front bony points of your pelvis here underneath that belly button. Now that engagement there is what we are looking to increase the experience, and always be feeling this here as a foundation to all our other movement patterns, okay? So this can be an exercise in the beginning. Just we'll relax now. Take a breath in. As you let that breath out, let those ribs translate down. Pull that pubic bone and belly button together without moving anything else. Feel that engagement, and now hold it. Try not to let that release while you try to breathe. So your diaphragm moving up and down actually is an exercise to challenge your ability to maintain this engagement of that muscle group. You can take a couple breaths, rest, reset, do 2 breaths there too. And in the beginning, those breaths will likely be shallow. And you're going to work on being able to maintain the engagement while taking a normal size breath. Okay? That's in the beginning a great place to begin to make sure that you're acknowledging the right activation of your transverse abdominis before you go into any further strengthening of that pattern.